So for those of you who may be joining us for the first time or may just be a week or two old into knowing us, I've got a 3-year-old you may hear in the background occasionally that is very loud. But basically, we're doing what we call the Profit Factory, something that we're going to have to rename here shortly. Profit Factory is about 16 to 18 week program in which we're walking stem to stern through the whole process of creating an online profitable funnel for your business, be it you're a brick and mortar business, you're selling stuff online, whatever it may be. We have clients in 32 different niches. We've worked with the NBA, we've worked with best-selling authors, a whole lot of different businesses over the years. And we found over the course of the last couple of years, there's a lot of questions that get raised and a lot of obstacles that we run into with our clients, even those that are making 7 and 8 figures with their online business. Nobody's got everything figured out all the time. And so Kurt and Shecky and I have sat down and kind of set up a roadmap, if you will, to go through what are the questions, what are the checkboxes that need to be answered all the way through this process. And each and every week we talk about one of those topics. I think we're on week 11, 12 now, Shecky? I don't know.
We're on week 8.
Okay. Well, I'm way ahead of you, I guess.
Yeah.
We're on week 8. And so for those of you who may have missed some of the previous weeks, we'll talk a little bit more about how to get that content later. But this is all for you guys and gals. Feel free to ask any questions you want. If you type a /Q into the chat as you're asking a question, it's going to show up in a different box. So we'll make sure we get to it. If you just have a comment or praise, whatever, you can go ahead and just send a message down there in the message box. And then these little clapping hands. So if you scroll your mouse over Shecky's picture and click to give props, basically that just tells them, hey, Shecky, you're doing a really good job at what you're doing and saying. And so, yeah, without further ado, actually, Shecky, there's one other thing I want to test. Tell me what you see on your end, or do you see anything on your end?
I'm seeing audio only on your picture.
Interesting.
And I see my picture.
Okay, well then now I've got a poor internet signal from you, so I won't do that again.
Yes.
But we are. I did hit the record button, Shecky. Let's go ahead and get this thing kicked off, and you can talk a little bit about what we are going to talk about this week. Okay,
very good. Thank you so much. I may sound a little weird because I'm getting a really bad echo. And anyway, I am thrilled. What's that?
You're clean. You're coming clean on my end.
Okay. I just get a 2-second delay where I'm hearing everything I'm saying. So this week is really great because it's the theme, how to create the snowball effect in your business. And I'm really excited about it because this is kind of where the rubber meets the road. And I know I've said this a few times before, but when you start to gain some consistency in your business and you do some very, very basic things, simple, but you are able to do them over and over and over and over, right? And they're not hard to do. And in fact, today we're going to talk about some of the low resistance ways to move in that direction. When you do that, you really can, after a few weeks or sometimes a couple months, 3 months, whatever, you can start really creating a snowball effect in your business. And it's exciting because people sometimes don't ever have the faith to make it there, right? Like they'll just do stuff and they'll do something for 2 or 3 weeks and it's great and they'll feel a sense of accomplishment, but they don't necessarily create any kind of long-term traction, let's just say. So that's really the big difference between with marketers that are doing well and making money and the ones who are not, right? So anyway, I know that, Nick, you've got a couple of examples that we talked about earlier. And given that I've got just horrible echo going on in my ear, I'm going to ask you to maybe talk about this first example. And let me just set it up for you because I want to give you guys sort of an idea of what I'm talking about with this consistency. You guys may have heard about the internet marketing party that we go to typically every month here in Austin, Texas. Well, I'm not in Austin right now, and Kurt's not in Austin right now, but when we go to these, they're in Austin, Texas. And they had an interesting sort of rise. Now, Internet Marketing Party is a business. So it's a live party culture, but that's how they deliver their content, right? So there's this really, really interesting backstory of how they came to be consistent and how really that affected their attendance and ultimately their success. And actually started with a client that has been a long-term client of Black Box Social Media. So Nick, now that it's set up, go ahead and take it away.
Thanks, Shecky. So I guess before we do that, I want to kind of frame what you were just talking about. This week, we're talking about, hosting consistent events, right? What we would suggest is a weekly event, but based on last week, we talked about content strategies, weekly content strategies. This week, we're talking about the events that you need to be inviting people to. So for those of you that don't know, Shecky and I and Kurt and Tom, we've all had a run with network marketing at some point in the past. And one of the big things they always taught that I like and we carry through now is always be building for your next big event. Always be building and pushing people from one step to the next if they're not closing, at that point. And so the same can be said for your audience and what you're doing online is that you need to be taking your prospects from your ads to your website to some content to their next piece of content, hopefully gathering their information so that you can continue to follow up, or we can do that through retargeting, which we talked about in previous weeks. But ultimately, it's continuing that conversation, continuing to give them information, continuing to educate them on not only what they want to learn about what you're doing, but also educating them on what kind of products and services that you can provide to scratch their itch, right? To provide them the information that or the service that they need to get whatever it is you're going to provide for them. Hold on one second. Sorry about that. Probably one of the few people in the world still with a landline. So no one is available. Okay. Sorry about that. Anyway, so this week we're talking about the weekly events, the things that you should be doing, providing for people. And Shecky and I are going to give some methods for providing those promotions here in a little bit. But the story that we had talked about that comes from our past is it's probably 5-6 years ago. Probably more like 6 now. Kurt and I had worked together in a previous endeavor, kind of as competitors, but we knew each other. We were friendly. And he kept inviting me every single month to this event that Shecky was talking about, the Internet Marketing Party, which was kind of the who's who of internet marketers here in Austin. Actually, people from around the country that were very well known would come and speak at this event on a monthly basis. And he kept inviting me to come out to this thing because it was growing some legs. It was getting, I think, about 300 people a month at that time. And to come to this party in downtown Austin where a speaker would speak and you get to network. And so I went and we saw a great speaker who's become a good friend of both Kurt and mine. And he spoke on a kind of a strategy that he was using at that point that was a blogging SEO strategy. And so we ended up enjoying the talk. And I turned to Kurt and I said, you know what? I can do what he was just talking about. If you can go out and sell it to clients, we'll start a business. Let's do that. And so that's exactly what we did. And our very first client is actually still a client to this day. And I kind of wanted to share this story, Shecky. I don't know that you ever know this, but the very first check that client wrote us was for $500. It was for a very simple little thing we built for him. And over the years, that relationship has blossomed. We've done a lot of good work for him. He has also grown his business tremendously. And now that person pays us 6 figures a year. Just one of our clients that's one of our 6-figure clients. So, those relationships can grow. Don't ever pass up that money if you're just getting started. So anyway, long story short, we were actually meeting with that client probably 6 months down the road. And the Internet Marketing Party, I hate to air dirty laundry, but it had started to kind of dip. It wasn't drawing the kinds of crowds that it had before. The numbers just weren't there. And we're over at our client's mansion and meeting with him. And we're like, hey, Phil, you going to go to the meeting this Thursday, the Internet Marketing Party? And Phil's like, I've been to a lot of those things. I love them. They're great for connecting with people, but I have a really hard time and they're going to have a really hard time growing because I never know when the thing is. Because this month it would be on a Thursday, the next month it would be on the second Tuesday, the following month it would be on a Wednesday, and they'd be bouncing around from location to location to location. And the people who were the prospects, or the potential customers for that club or that meeting, we never knew when it was. We had to keep an eye out for an email that popped up. So Phil said, I think what they should do with the Internet Marketing Party is say it's every second Thursday of a month or every third Thursday of a month, and they need to keep it at one place, just like church. You never question when church is, right? It's always on a Sunday morning at this specific time, whatever it may be. And so Kurt actually went and talked to, it was before he really knew David well, that owns the Internet Marketing Party, but he's like, here's the struggle people are having with your club. They love it. They want to attend, but they don't know when it is. You're not consistent with it. You need to be hosting these events on a consistent basis so that people know when they can attend and be a part of this thing. And so David heeded that advice, and actually he still credits Kurt with that to this day, even though it wasn't Kurt's advice to begin with. But he has now consistently done those on a monthly basis. I think it's the second Thursday. I don't make it out much because I got little ones, but so that group has grown. Now David's doing them in San Diego, and I think he's done some in the Silicon Valley a few times, attracting world-class talent to come and speak at them. We've generated a lot of our clientele from those parties and made a lot of great connections over the years. So when we're talking about hosting events, they need to be things that are consistent, done on a consistent basis so that your audience knows when they are, how they're going to happen, and what they can expect when they're there. So I think that was the gist of my story there, Shaq.
Yeah, it's a good story, and it talks a lot about consistency. And even if we go back to our conversation of last week when we did our webinar, which we call Breakout Sessions, that was the word I was searching for. We talked about a quarterly and monthly, and then boiled down to a weekly content calendar. So even if it's something as simple as an article or a blog post, there's a way to structure things so that you can deliver consistent information. And that information can be delivered across lots of different media, or one different media if you prefer. It's not really that big of a deal. But you bring up a good point. I love your analogy about church, because it's like it's expected, right? Like it's always at the same time. It's always, and that way your tribe gets built that way, right? If you think about churches and the way they started, there's a few people that go, they like the pastor or the guy who's speaking, and they tell some of their other friends, and then that word gets out, and then more friends come, and pretty soon everybody understands it's 10 o'clock every Sunday morning at the chapel down the street. And it works out really, really well. We have another story of a much more successful company that some of you know that really turned around a bleeding company, like a company that was doing well, and then just for whatever reason they weren't delivering consistent content. And they started losing money, quite a bit of money. And if you've been in the internet marketing space for a long time, I'm sure you're going to recognize the name of who these people are. But we were in San Diego recently, and this traffic and conversion event, and it's put on by Digital Marketer. Right? So most of us know who that is. It's an extremely successful internet marketing company in Austin. They're across, 40, 50 different niches now. They've done some pretty amazing things. But Nick, why don't you go ahead and tell the little details of how the changes were made and what happened and how they were able to turn things around.
Well, so yeah, they actually covered this during the traffic conversion we were at, when was that, last month? And the point was they were trying to prove a concept. They had this idea in mind that if they were constantly providing good content to their audience, that over time that it's going to pay off. It wasn't necessarily that, I'm going to post a blog post this week, or I'm going to put a video out that's going to this week that's going to make me $1 trillion with my business. They realized they were in it for the long haul, and so they were going to test the strategy, which was producing content week after week after week, that was going to that was going to educate and entertain their potential prospects, which were, people who want to do digital marketing. And so I think for like 12 months or so, they were losing money on a monthly basis, basically pushing money towards advertising, pushing people to these blog posts and this content that they were creating. And then all of a sudden, one month, they just see it start to pick up, and it is just skyrocketing from there. And the point of the story is not to tell you to go out and spend a bunch of money and go into the hole with your business. The point is it works. You don't have to put a bunch of money into it right up front, but basically you can put the effort in now, and that'll help with getting you there to having the amount of content that people are going to be going and seeing and having that on a regular basis. I know we had talked about a friend of ours, Shecky, and you guys might talk about this more on Wednesday. You also don't need to have to go out and create 15 weeks or 30 weeks or 52 weeks of content before you ever get started. It's really a matter of, just start with this week. It just takes one step to get momentum started. I don't remember your Tony Robbins quote, but basically just go out and put something out there. Hopefully the smallest audience that you're going to have for your weekly content will be the first one, right? And then after that, it's going to grow, and the snowball effect that Shecky's talking about. So we've got a friend who does webinars every single week for his audience. But the secret of the sauce behind his business, and he's got a good sized business, is that he's only got 8 weeks really worth of content. And then he just puts it on rotation, because those people who are, coming in this week to watch his content may come back in week 3 or week 4 or week 5. And eventually they're going to either, what we say, buy or die, right? They're either going to buy into what his program is, and they're going to stop paying attention to the promotional material because that's lower level stuff, right? Or they're going to disappear because after 8 weeks, they've lost interest in whatever the reason was that they got involved with him in the first place. So even though he's, after that 8 week cycle, he's starting over again with this content, the people that got in week 1 aren't going to see week 9 more than likely. And even if they do, they probably won't remember it by that point. So really, he's only combined about 8 weeks worth of content, and he just cycles it over and over and over again and continues to go through that cycle. And it creates sales constantly for him without him having to go out and reinvent the wheel every single week to produce content, which I think is a great strategy.
He has also admitted that across those 8 webinars, about 50% of the content is the same as across those 8 webinars.
Yeah.
So there's maybe 8 slightly different ways to look at kind of the same theme. And he changes 3 or 4 bullet points on the webinar invite, and off we go. So people are seeing a lot of that same content over and over and over again. And it's interesting because I remember when he was back in the bunker this year, he said, I get people that have seen stuff 5 and 6 times over, and they write in with testimonials and go, "Oh my God, your content is so amazing. This was so great." So the point being is that if you've got something good to deliver, just keep on delivering it. You can make some mild changes to it. Think about maybe a slightly different angle to the way it might appeal to your audience in a different way. But the meat and potatoes could be very, very similar.
So, Shecky,
go ahead.
No, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I'm done.
Well, so we've talked a little bit about, and I've got a checklist here of things I wanted to cover. We've talked about webinars and blog posts. Let's kind of cover some of the things that people can be producing for their audience, to be building for these weekly events. What kind of things would you want to send your audience to? Let's talk about some examples of what people can be doing as far as those weekly promotions go.
Well, there's two considerations, first of all. So the first thing is, what do you think your audience is going to respond to? And some of that may be based on the kind of business that you have, right? So, for example, if you're a really product-oriented business, like you're selling a car, right? You may have a conversation or an article about some new safety feature, right? That's one example. But for example, in the internet marketing space, we do a lot of training. So for us to do blabs and webinars and things like that, that's a really good forum because we're trying to cover, a certain sequence of things that you have to do each time. So consideration number one is obviously always going to be your audience. Like, what is it that's going to be the best way to deliver content to them? So it might be live, it might be a video, it might be something recorded, it might be something written. Look, if it's something really technical, sometimes people do well reading bullet points of how to go through a very technical sequence. Some people would prefer to go through a video that's not live where they can pause it. So it just depends. That's consideration number one, is the customer. Number two is, what are you good at? Right? So some people are really good at just like Kurt can talk to anybody, right? And he's really good at asking questions and diving deep into a conversation. So he's also pretty good at sharing what he knows. So blabs and webinars are good for him. And frankly, I feel he'd probably be really good at podcasts where he was interviewing somebody else. He would probably, now I think about it, he'd be even better if somebody was interviewing him, right? So you have to play to your strengths, right? Some people don't want to ever get in front of a camera. They don't ever want to speak to a group, right? So they'll just write and write and write and write. And that's okay, blog posts, things like that. But there's going to come a time when you have to ask yourself, am I truly servicing my audience? Hopefully, after a period of time of you getting used to delivering valuable content, you might switch through a couple of different formats and test them out to see what's going to land better with your audience. Right? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. Anyway, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Nick, but it really could be any medium.
Yeah, and I agree with you. You know, what your audience is going to respond to best is definitely one of the important points. But I think maybe even more important than that is, what are you going to get? What are you going to do, and what are you going to do consistently? So if I'm not a video person, actually being on the Blabs, you know, it's not something that's in my comfort zone, but that's okay. I can push myself outside of that. The important thing is, if you had to go out and create some content for your audience this week, which one are you going to go and do? I mean, a store that, you know, gets everything, they get ready to get ready, and they get all the products on the shelf, they never open their door, isn't going to make any money. So the important thing about creating content is, if it's easier for you to start off creating a blog or even an informative email, or if it's easier for you to just grab your iPhone and start taking a 2-minute video that teaches your audience something that they may not know about, you know, whatever your subject matter is. If it's a webinar, you can put together an hour-long training on something that's very important to the people who are on your list. You know, whatever those things are, probably what I would call the low-hanging fruit, the easiest way to get your information out there and to get started with that first step, right? That's where I would start. As you're going along, you can kind of poll your audience and ask them, okay, well, would you prefer to have something written? Would you prefer me to do a blog every week or whatever it may be? You know, to get kind of meta, this whole Profit Factory process, which we're doing right now, is kind of that whole thing, right? Every single week, we're sending out a blog post or an email with a little bit of information about a blog post that we wrote that's going to lead people to this Smag Mob, which also in turn leads them to a replay afterwards, which encourages them to sign up for our Wednesday webinars where we deep dive into this information. So we're kind of doing a lot of those pieces. And along the way, we're also learning a lot about what our audience likes, what they're responding to, what we may want to cut out as we move along, what we may want to add later on. You know, we're looking at podcasts now. So there's a lot of things. I know you wanted to add to that, Shecky, but yeah, I mean,
I do. I think I want to create a quote that I think you were just about to say. Because people ask us all the time, well, what's the best medium for doing it? It's the one that's going to get done. Because let's face it, if you hate doing something, it's not going to get done. Right? So if you're just going to write a blog post a week, that's better than saying you're going to do a webinar or a video that never gets done, or that you only do one or two of. Right? So consistency is the really big issue there. And I agree with you, Nick. I think after time, you start getting some feedback from your audience, and you start feeling like, okay, I'm comfortable because of the initial content that I delivered, and now I can move forward. Right? So I want to address Bad Ink Be Gone, who typed in a question. I'm trying to find out, Bad Ink Be Gone, what's your name? Hold on a second. I don't see your name. Anyway.
Tanya.
Tanya, thank you. Tanya. Okay.
I'm guessing by her screen name that she is a tattoo removal specialist.
Yes.
Am I wrong?
Yeah, which is a really cool business. And given that we live in Austin, it's a very well-needed service. So Tanya asks this, I don't know if you guys can all read it, but is there a way to automate this process, maybe with pre-recorded webinars? I don't want to be a slave to creating videos, webinars, or blog weekly. And the answer is yes, but you still have to get into a rhythm, right? You still have to create some content on a regular basis. What you'll probably find is that, let's say you recorded a webinar right out of the gate, and it did okay. You still haven't gone through that process of you getting familiar, regularly delivering that content via webinar, and your viewers have not gotten into a regular thing of coming to see you. So you haven't really had a chance to get that feedback and get that feel for a thing. So I'm not saying that you can't just record a webinar right out of the gate and do 2 or 3 of them and cycle the same 2 or 3 of them over and over and over again and do what our buddy does and change some of the bullet points. You absolutely can do that. But I think you're missing, when you do that, a little bit of the nuances of what's going on between you and the relationship with the people on your list. There is an evolution to that, let's just say. And our buddy that does that, his name is Steve. I'm not going to mention his last name. But Steve did, I think, a couple of years of live webinars before he got to a point where it was just automated, right? And this guy makes a lot of money. So you also have to say, well, how strong is my why and how much work am I willing to put in to achieve my why? That's part of it, right? Strong why is always going to overcome these little hurdles. We all know that. So he went and started creating automated webinars. And he did okay, right? It's fine. But what he found was he did not do as well as when he stepped and sat down in the chair in front of his computer with his microphone and delivered those same webinars over and over live. Why? Because there's obviously a certain energy that happens when you're live. That's why we're successful with these blabs. I mean, I haven't really looked at the stats lately, Nick, but I know that we get a lot more of the people registering for our webinars on Wednesdays coming off the live blab than we do off the recorded blab. Yeah. And I know you're the stats guy. I don't necessarily know what the stats are, but I know it's always more powerful to do things live. So I'm not saying no. I'm just saying, think about what's best for your business.
Well, and to add to that, Shaky, so Tanya, I don't know that webinars are probably your best option. I don't know your product other than what you put here, but it seems like it would be something that's a pretty quick decision to purchase from your customer's point of view. So creating an hour-long webinar or 4 or 8 of them isn't going to probably serve them or you. It may be a matter of just recording a quick 2 or 3 minute video that you can promote, or a blog post or a series of blog posts about, why the things that you're teaching people or showing people is superior to other options that are out there, to your competition. Maybe some of the science behind how a tattoo works, what it does to the skin, and how, science is now figuring out ways to remove that, painlessly or whatever it may be. I don't have a tattoo, so I don't know anything about it. But the point is, it doesn't necessarily have to be a webinar. It could be a blog post. It could be a video. It could be it looks like you have a YouTube video with videos. Perfect. It could be that you're just running a special 1 week, right? Next week this week actually is St. Patty's Day. So maybe you create a blog about how people go out and drink way too much on St. Patrick's Day, and it's the third biggest day of the year for getting tattoos because everybody's drunk and feeling good and they're, getting tattoos. And how, and this week we're going to run a special on, or next week we're going to run a special on how to 20% off of all Shamrock tattoos. Or I don't know, whatever it may be. But the point is, you're producing some sort of promotion every week, be it educational, be it monetary or educational. Every week you want to be providing your audience with something new, because everybody's coming into your funnel at some different point. Some of them this week, some of them a month ago, maybe some of them a year ago. And if you're always just that guy walking around going, I sell insurance, I sell insurance, I sell insurance, I sell insurance, pretty soon everybody's like this. But if you're providing them value, providing them new things they haven't seen before, keeping them entertained while you're educating them, you're going to have a much bigger, better business online than your competitor who's going, buy my insurance, right? So
can I throw my 2 cents in on that one as well?
Yeah.
Because this is a really interesting niche to me. As a marketer, I'm always looking for the emotional angle to this stuff, right? And you touched on something, Nick, that I think is really pretty cool about these people getting drunk on St. Patrick's Day. But if you think about the reason why somebody gets a tattoo, it's some sort of really emotional tie, right? Like they're honoring somebody that they loved. They're honoring something nationalistic. They're honoring something that they felt really, really strongly about at one time, right? And the reason that they're getting that thing removed is they no longer feel that way, right? So I'm emphasizing that word feel because I see a really, really successful funnel for you, Tanya, with even just in an email sequence, telling stories about people that actually got tattoos with a little, sort of disclaimer at the end. It's like, oh my God, now they don't feel that way. Now they're dating somebody else. They're married to somebody else. They don't live in the U.S. anymore, and they hate the American flag on their left calf, whatever it is, right? So if you go to that emotional play, the only real video then you need at that point is more just, like here's kind of how the process works and why it's not so painful as you think and blah, blah, blah. And it's really easy to get done and it's not super expensive. And you now have that opportunity to wipe away all that emotional BS now. Because if you're sitting with a tattoo that you don't like, it's not that you don't like it. You don't like the emotional attachment to what it represents. Right. So I think there's a comment from a guy who's done a lot of marketing. I think there's a pretty big opportunity there for you. So anyway, okay. Thank you. Exactly, Shecky. Thank you.
I'll get to her statement here in a second, but and I know I bring up this example a lot, but maybe people on here haven't seen it. So I've got a 3-year-old, and for the first 11 months, she did not sleep through the night. I mean, it was awful. My wife and I were miserable, zombies for the first year of her life. I mean, we were happy we had a child, but I started reaching out or doing some research probably about 6 months in to figure out a way to get her to sleep through the night so that we could have our sanity back. And I came across a lady, and I've now been following her for the last 3.5 years, that teaches parents to teach their children how to sleep. And I'm on her email list, and every single week I get an educational email from her about, kind of diet, diet of young children, or, sleeping's always a big thing. Or if some news article comes out about, parents are getting less sleep these days because kids are looking at screens too much, or whatever it may be. It's just a short little something every week in email. And I read almost all of them because she's become the expert in my mind, right? But every week I get that email from her, and every week it's pitching the exact same program that I bought 3.5 years ago. Now, if she had been really good, she would have probably removed me from that list, or maybe I opted in with a couple different emails. But the point is, she isn't reinventing a product. She is just spinning it a little bit of a different way to stay in front of me, her audience, so that she's forthright in my mind, so that should I choose to purchase, which I already had, but should I choose to purchase something like that in the future, she's going to be the person that I'm going to go to. So when we're talking about, weekly promoting things to your audience, it doesn't necessarily have to be this big complicated thing. It just needs to be something that your audience is going to appreciate and look forward to. And she knows that I'm a parent, right? That person knows, or that lady knows I'm a parent. So as long as she's providing me parental information that may not be on every single website that's out there, it becomes valuable to me. And that way it's building value with me, with her, so that I know if she releases a new product down the line, I'm more likely to buy it than, from somebody else. Now, Betting Beyond said that her open rates are 20%. That's actually pretty good. Don't be discouraged at 20%. We kind of like this. If we're emailing our entire list and get 20%, if we're segmenting our list, we get a lot higher rates. But I think if you're not getting the sales that you want at 20% open rate, there's two things. You need to ask for the sale more often. And then three things. Second of all, provide people with more value. If you provide them value up front, they'll reciprocate by purchasing from you on the back end. And third, continue running traffic. And that's really what we're here all about. Social media ad genius is all about running traffic. But you got to have all these other things in place in order to really get there and to fine tune that machine. But, go to the traffic store and purchase as much traffic you can, because the more emails that you have, the bigger the list you have, that 20% continues to grow. Not necessarily in percentage wise, but the number of people who are reading what you got.
Right. And Nick, I want to just put an asterisk on that. I think, open rates obviously can always be improved. And again, Tanya, if you're hitting on some with your subject lines and telling stories that are emotional, that are related to other people with tattoos, you'll probably find that you'll improve your open rates. We've learned a lot from a guy named Andre Chaperon. Maybe this is just a side comment, but he has a phenomenal email course called Autoresponder Madness. Nick, I think, don't we have a link for it, I think, too, don't we? Don't we have it at smag2.arm? Or smag2.com/arm.
I'll double check.
Yeah, so let me just put that in there. I'm pretty sure you can get there from this link.
You changed it. No, that didn't work.
No. Well, if anybody wants it, you can send an email to support@Black Social Media, and for any of these links that we're talking about, we'll be happy to send you back a link, because I know that Debbie's asking for the link for the lady that teaches your kid how to sleep too. But obviously that's a pretty emotional play too. But Nick, when you think about it, every time you open one of her emails, you still already know what the solution is. The solution is get your dang kid to sleep, right? So if you're reading all of those emails, there's nothing new in the solution. The only thing that's new is there's a slightly different emotional angle to the same solution, right? So this is exactly what we're talking about with delivering regular content. Your solution may not ever change. You may offer some affiliate things, whatever, for a while. But in general, your main solution is your main solution until you develop other products down the road. But there's nothing wrong with just taking a little sliver and going, hey, this is one emotional piece of this. This is another emotional piece. This is another one. That's totally fine, right? Adrian, I think, has a question too. So it looked like you did, but if you want,
Adrian, go ahead and drop
it. You're more than welcome to.
Go ahead and drop your question in for sure. Debbie, to answer your question, her name is Dana Obelman. She's the Sleep SENSE. We don't get paid by that, but she's great. Yeah. My baby did start, or my little girl did start sleeping through the night, and we love her for that. There was another thing that I kind of wanted to bring up, Shecky, and you and I were talking about it, and again, just sharing information. I was at the gym this morning and listening to a friend of ours, Mike Dillard's got a great podcast, the Self-Made Man podcast.
I love that podcast.
He was talking to another friend of Kurt's, a guy named Ryan Moran, who's here in Austin as well. You may know Ryan. Ryan is very successful. So, but something caught, and it pertains to the conversation we're having right now is both those guys have put together content or pretty consistent content for their audiences, basically piggybacking off of others. So Mike does it's a weekly podcast where basically he's interviewing very successful people in a realm of different niches, but all relating to being an accomplished man, whether it be a father or a businessman or investor or good health or nutrition, all those things. He interviews the best of the best in all these because it comes actually from a very selfish place for him. He wants to learn all this stuff. And so he figured the best way to learn it is I go out and interview people who are the best of the best in this. And, Mike's a very successful guy. He's got a good network of people that can introduce him to all these people. And each and every week, he's asking these people questions that he wants to know, but he's recording the whole thing and then providing it as content out there for his audience, which I think is great. Well, his discussion with Ryan Moran, I think this was from November when they recorded this. Ryan had held a huge conference here in Austin where he had Robert Herjavec from Shark Tank, and there was a guy that was a $350 million real estate guy, and I forget who else he had. There were some big names on the ticket. And Mike was asking him, well, why did you choose this array of people? And ultimately, Ryan's goal is to own the Cincinnati Indians. I don't know. I don't watch baseball. The baseball team, Cleveland Indians. Sorry. Yeah. No, it started with the C. But yeah, he wants to buy the Cleveland Indians, and he figures the only way he's going to grow to $1 billion company is to hang out with a bunch of people who are worth $100 million or $500 million or $1 billion. And the only way he can really get into those networks is by inviting them to a conference that he put together, that he sells tickets for. He's going to pay them to speak. And by doing so, he's able to connect with them. They now know who he is. They know what his mission is. And he's able to kind of get in their ear and ask them questions and possibly partner with them in some future dealings. And I thought that was really smart. So whatever your industry is, if you're looking for how can I provide content on a regular basis, go out and interview some people if you have a hard time coming up with it on your own. I mean, it's what
I want to add one thing to that, Nick, because it's interesting. I know both of these guys pretty well. I mean, I know Mike pretty well, and I know Ryan pretty well. And I would say that on a personal level, both of these guys are extreme introverts. Like, they've gotten up and spoken on stage, but if you look at the way that their career started and the way their online efforts started, much of their initial online stuff was very much behind the scenes. And Mike learned copywriting, and that obviously served him very, very well, as did Ryan. So these are guys that are not the kind of people, like Kurt is the opposite. I mean, we know Kurt real well, and he's an extreme extrovert. Nothing wrong with that. But what I'm saying is, if you're sitting on the other side of this computer watching this right now, and you're saying, oh, I can't do that because I'm an introvert, you got to get over that. I mean, and the thing is, all you got to, with an interview kind of style, whether that's Blab or whether that's on a video or a webinar or a podcast or whatever, even if it's just recorded, right? You can push the limelight to the person that you're interviewing. If you're that much of an introvert, have 7 or 8 questions pre-prepared and rehearse them over and over. If do it on, if you're on video, put it off to the side, right? If you're on audio, it doesn't matter. But being an introvert, I guess what I'm saying is there's some really amazing entrepreneurs out there that have put themselves out there that are extreme introverts, and they're doing really, really well. But mostly they're doing really, really well because they learned some good skills, and they ultimately pushed themselves to get out there in front of their audience, and they knew deep down in their hearts that they had something of high value to deliver their audience. And that's really the most important thing, is you almost have to remove yourself from this and say, it's all customer-centric. What's the best way to service our customers, right? So what's the best for them? And I think if you do that and create kind of this altruistic situation, it's like, hey, I'm doing it for them, it helps you a little bit to step out of your shell. Anyway, that's my 2 cents on that.
So Shecky, we're coming up against the top of the hour. We
Already?
are. It goes, time flies when we're having fun. So, Chicky, tell people about Wednesday and a little bit more about what we're going to be covering, why they should attend.
Okay, so we are in week 8 of the Social Media Ad Genius Profit Factory, which is essentially a 12-step process. So we're here on the graph, right? We're right in we're in the middle of 3 weeks of talking about content creation, right? So last week was more about the how, right? This week is more about the what. And next week, we're going to talk about all the science of the calls to action that you can create at the end of your weekly event, whatever you want to call that. So this week, you're going to learn a lot about the different ways that you can do stuff, how to, obviously some automation tricks, and just really some of the ways that you can get yourself doing things consistently. So today was really just a tease, and it's more, the Blab format is more of an open-ended conversation. But it's we're going to do a really, really deep dive. We got a pretty heavy-duty training. I think we've got something like 53 slides in this week's presentation. And we've, of course, always got the SMAG Momentum Challenge, too. So we've seen some really good responses from that. If you don't know what that is, just come on Wednesday. If you're a Social Media Ad Genius member, of course, we thank you very, very much. And if you're not, you should be, because if you are, you get access to all of these live things forever. They all stay lifetime in your Social Media Ad Genius back office. If you're not a member, you'll be able to see a replay for a few days, but then it's going to go away. So to be able to have this library of information of these breakout sessions that we do, this essentially is the template for the next product that we're releasing, which will easily be $1,000 product. But for anybody that's a Social Media Ad Genius member, you're getting this sort of pretty version, just the raw videos. You're getting it all for free, and it's just our way of saying thank you for being part of the Social Media Ad Genius family. So thank you. We're very happy to be here, and I'm excited. If any of you are really kind of in the internet space and appreciate being able to work from anywhere, I will tell you guys, this is freaking amazing. I don't know if you guys know this. I'm currently in South America. I live in Austin. I'm in South America. You'd never know the difference, right? Kurt is somewhere in some mastermind on the West Coast. I think he's on a boat, some like yacht somewhere or something, with a whole bunch of other badass marketers as a mastermind. Nick is at his beautiful home in suburban Austin. So this is the beauty of the internet, is we can connect from anywhere in the world. And, even if you have a brick and mortar business, getting some things up online and creating some automation and being able to do some things online to generate business is going to help you release some of the tethers of your business. Even if you have a brick and mortar, it's going to give you a little bit more freedom. So I really want to encourage you to push the envelope. Just as a final thing, I see, Adrian, you've got a question about conversion tracking and all that other kind of stuff. That is stuff that not only is in Social Media Ad Genius, so I want to encourage you to watch the videos, but it also is on a couple of the blabs from a couple of weeks ago that we talked about. So there are recordings in your back office about this that pertain exactly to that question. I want to say week 3, week 4, week 5, somewhere in there. Right.
Also, Adrian's part of the Insiders Club, so you can actually go drop your questions into the Insiders Club forum, and we'll definitely cover those Wednesday on our call. If you're able to join the call live on Wednesday after the breakout session, Kurt and I can walk through your funnel with you and answer questions live as you want to go through it. So if you're able to make
and that's
4 p.m. Central on Wednesday.
And that's just another good thing I want to just re-mention, is that one of the benefits of being a Social Media Ad Genius member is if you're on our regular monthly plan, then you get to be into that Insiders Club automatically, right? So this is a chance to have access to the brain of the Social Media Ad Genius himself live. So every week when we finish our Wednesday webinar from 3 to 4 Central, from 4 o'clock afterwards, it takes about an hour typically, Kurt will go in and answer questions live. So Adrian, I want to encourage you, just take, this question is perfect for Insiders Club. So just drop it in the forum and we'll see it, and it will get addressed Wednesday, and it will get answered, and you will have a recorded version of that answer, which is great. So anyway,
in the questions box, I'm dropping the link for the webinar. Go ahead and click smag2.com/Webby and register for the breakout session on Wednesday. It's at 3 p.m. Central and free for you to attend. And Kurt will be there. He'll be back in Austin tomorrow. And we'll be talking with Shecky somewhere in South America, wherever he is, on that call on Wednesday. So go ahead and definitely join that. The recording for this call will be up in a couple hours. We'll send out to the list. If you're not on our list and want to be notified of these calls every week and all the recordings and everything, you can go to smag2.com/start. There's a whole list of things you can plug into. Just go ahead and go through those. And we'll be happy to continue providing you content on a weekly basis, which we're going to come full circle to what we're talking about this week, Shecky. So, Shecky, enjoy your time. Go ahead.
Thank you. It's good to hang out with you from another hemisphere.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of us have to stay home and work while you're out partying and vacationing. So.
Yeah, well, somebody's got to do it.
Yeah, for sure. So thank you, everyone, for being here. We will see you all on Wednesday at the breakout session. Take care.
Thank you so much. Y'all have a good one.